Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to bring you a monster of a video. I'm going to show you 18 viable builds that have been played in the 2021 ECS tournament, Hunger Dome tournament. And yeah, I'm going to show you 5 healers, 5 tanks and 8 damage-oriented builds. They are all viable. They should be quite timeless. Of course, we're gonna get updates, but just follow my channel. You're gonna get the updates. I'm gonna start with a rough overview where I'm gonna walk you through all of them, what the general playstyle is, and then in the remainder of the video, I'm gonna go through every build, at least briefly describe the major disciplines, and so you can get a pretty good idea of the general playstyle. I'm gonna keep doing more in-depth guides, so yeah, hello, if you like my content, please hit the subscribe button. If you're thinking about buying Crowfall, go to my website crusaderw.com. You'll find the link below in the description. There you're gonna find a 10% discount code. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to drop by on my Twitch channel. I'm often streaming Crowfall. I'm happy to answer all your questions or ask me directly on Discord. And now let's jump to the video. Let's have a brief overlook of all the archetypes. So first of all, we have the support archetypes. That would be the Centaur Crusader, the Elkin Paladin, the High Elf Inquisitor, the Human Arbiter. He's like he started out as a hybrid, but he's basically almost a full healer, and the Wood Elf Earthkeeper. So let's begin with the Centaur Crusader. Now we have the talents here. So, Holy Symbol, this is ground targeted heal, very powerful. Flash of Light you can use to blind an enemy and heal friendlies around that enemy. Then the stud bundles are always good, 30 spirit, that should translate into ×4, 120 support power. Hands of the Gods, it's a root, but... Or is it that other heal? Now, Hands of the Gods should be that one. That's a root. That's always helpful. Tend Wounds is a targeted single target heal over time. Also quite powerful. The Hoary Aura gives your whole group HP. I'm not sure how much at this point. Circle of Life you can use to resurrect multiple enemies within a certain radius. Empathy, 40 spirit ×4, again gives you 160 support power, so big one, also critical healing chance, very nice. Noble Purpose, I think, is that one. I wouldn't take that. I usually go, or do I take that? No, I think I take Noble Purpose, but I don't take the strength in numbers, I think, but actually let's cover that when I go a bit more into depth in this guide. So Transcendence, this gives you Illuminate, also very strong heal. Then we go the Crusader. Let's jump the rest of those because I realize I won't have enough time to cover all of it if I do it in depth, but I'm gonna cover all the archetypes in basically this month, and what I can't do this month I'm gonna do next month. I'm gonna make a bit more in-depth guide about them and basically go over all those things. So we have Naiad. Fountain of Life is one of the strongest healing spell in the game at the moment, and Pixie is also very strong. Then we have God's Reach, which usually would give you extra support power if it wouldn't be a white one, but it is what it is. And Phantom Armor also increases your armor. That's also pretty strong. So Centaur Crusader, really strong healer, especially because the Centaur also gives you an additional group buff. So the Elkin Paladin. Let's look into the Elkin Paladin. Like I said, we're gonna skip the talents and we're gonna jump straight into the basic workings. So the Righteous Stand helps. The Holy Warrior becomes a very powerful heal for yourself and the person in the group with the lowest health. This heals for big amounts. Divine Light is a certain you put in the ground with your sword, and then you have a damage dealing and healing circle for 12 seconds. I think the cooldown is 24. Devotion is an ability you activate that heals everybody in your group whenever you deal damage. The Reproach is a leap. Again, here passive things with support power, more support power here from the promotion class. And the disciplines are Runecaster, which gives you a reactive barrier and increases your support power even further. And the Sanctuary is an defensive field that you can put down. You can activate the Divine Light, the Divine Aura from Transcendent Warrior. This increases the healing modifier by 10%, so everybody gets 10% more heals, and you get 75 more support power. This also goes for other healers in the group. So Blood Rose gives thorns to everybody healed. This is strong, and Bearer's Insignia is also nice because you restore health to others around you. So let's look at the next healer one, the High Elf Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is usually actually the fire mage of the game, and this one is the healing spec. So Absolution is a damage spell. Here you get no support power, so we definitely want the Furor, so you definitely have to take one of those two to just get out into the rest of the tree. I would maybe even take that because you will do a lot of attack damage, because basic attacks increase. Every third basic attack increases your support power by 75 and can stack up to 5 times. Furor basically locks you into place but heals everybody in your group within 50 meters for a big amount of health. The Fireball deals damage. You don't really need that. I think the same goes for Condemnation. Here's another stat bundle. The range distance bonus definitely helps with hitting people, so you don't have to go that deep in so far. The Hellfire Shield or the Hellfire Aura actually also heals people, so that is a talent you should always take. And here is the promotion. Fire of Life is basically a rescue, so you cast it on somebody and they can't die for, I don't know, is it 5 seconds? Is it 8 seconds? All the rest then, let's go into disciplines again. Also here, the Inquisitor has a Fountain of Life from the Naiad and a Cleanse. Fountain of Life is one of the strongest healing abilities in-game that come from disciplines. The Transcendent Warrior here again, so you have the Divine Aura that increases healing. The Phantom Armor we've seen, and the Resurrection, so you can resurrect other players. So, next healing class we want to cover is the Human Arbiter. So the Human Arbiter, it's also a Cleric, like we've seen before with the Centaur Crusader. This one is also a bit more offensive oriented, so he has a stamina drain aura around him. 10 wounds, also great for heals. Same goes for the Holy Symbol. He also has a Holy Aura. So you might not want to run a Centaur and an Arbiter at the same time because they overlap so much, and the buffs and the abilities don't stack. So I'm not even sure if you can have 2 10 wounds at the same time on a target. Circle of Life is your AoE res. Here you get again more spirit and therefore support power. The Illuminate. I'm not sure if the Illuminate becomes a healing ability on the Arbiter. No, it's mana regen. The Holy Symbol also applies knockdown, that's nice. And the 10 wounds becomes a heal over time. This is great. So here we have Forest Creature. Pixie Dust is nice because it gives your group a big healing buff. 25% more healing for 30 seconds. And a slow stake, so you can slow enemies. It's great for kiting and stuff. Also the protection stake helps because 15% less damage for people around you. And with the fortified stakes, that protection stake gets even better. I think it goes up to 20%, and it also increases the radius. And the V1 decreases the damage that enemies deal by 20% for 30 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times. Again, here the minus, the fortified stakes help with the protection stake. The sturdy prevents damage when you're high health. So here, the Earthkeeper. This is basically your druid healer. So what does he get? He gets a blight and the ritual sacrifice. This is not really interesting. Bark skin, which increases the armor. Oh, wait, yeah. It doesn't increase armor, it gives a shield and might have some other effects, but let's look into that in a bit. Here we can see through the promotion class. So you get 400 support power. Your blight now heals friendly and has a chance to spawn healing orbs for each ally healed. Bark skin heals you when cast and heals again if the barrier is broken. And you can spawn healing orbs for an enemy hit with Grasping Root. You get that new mechanic which is called Essence Burn, but I'm gonna go that also in the in-depth guide. So you get the Shared Gift, the Healing Rain, which is pretty cool, loved by the sun, and you also get the Naiad. Again, here we have that Fountain of Life, very strong healing ability at the moment, and the Cleanse. The protection stake and the soothing wind, the fortified stake to make the protection stake also stronger, like we saw on the Arbiter, and the supreme element where fire damage heals you for 20% of the damage taken. Those were the healers. So now we can jump over to the defense characters. So the defense archetypes are the Stoneborn Secutor, the Minotaur Pitfighter, the Simnitari Sanctifier, the Wood Elf Frostguard, and the Elkin Fury. So the Stoneborn Secutor. So this is the Knight, specialized in taking damage. I think it has the Reckoning build. We will see that in a second on the Discipline. Here we get Shield Swipe, Shield Block. So he is basically mostly about using his shield to deal damage and just tank a lot of damage and protecting the enemies behind him. Hi Makusa, how are you doing? I'm just going through the archetypes until the tourney starts. So we have Force Mage, so the Secutor can push people away, which is especially very strong if you have positioning fights where you're up on a ledge or on a keep on the balcony and you want to push people down. You're gonna have the Reactive Barrier, which gives you a port power, attack power and a barrier. You're gonna have the Sanctuary, increases resist all by 2000, which means effectively 20% less damage from those sources, and Overwhelming Odds, which increases your own resistance. So Sanctuary also increases resistance for friendlies who are in that field. You have Illusory Shield, which slows enemies and slows them. It can ricochet off to additional people, and Phantom Armor, which increases your armor. Then the Minotaur Pitfighter archetype. So this is basically one of my favorite classes. I played him a lot when the game was early. I think the Alpha Warrior is stronger at the moment, but that's just my personal opinion. I might be wrong with that. Here you get Strength, Throw a Hurlbat that you can slow enemy, Vicious Stomp, which can where you can apply a bleed or suppress people. Another minor discipline slot, Aegis of Destruction, which gives you a shield and heals you. Fast counter attack, which regens stamina when you're retaliating. The Leap, which is the signature ability, so you can jump around twice for 20 meters after a bit of a cooldown. And you can wear Plate. The Leap heals you when you're below 50%, but only every 90 seconds. The Whirling Pain gets a barrier. I don't think this is very strong. And your Neckbreaker increases your health and heals you. You get the Ultimate Warrior, which is another self-heal. Music, which allows you to equip the Troubadour. So you can do consonant change, which slows and damages enemies, and the Requiem, which is an aura around you, which causes enemies to take 15% more damage. You have the area of effect increased by that, so this increases it to 15 meter, which is pretty decent and pretty strong. So the Troubadour Entertainer, this build is a very, very great debuffer. So you have Glamour Weapon, which is nice. You can increase your attack power by 150 for 45%. Increased movement speed is also very helpful. And the Speedy Retaliate also helps with staying close to your enemies to apply that Troubadour. The next defense class we want to look at is the Netari Sanctifier. This is the fire mage of the game, which is spec'd as a melee character. So he gets his range reduced to 8 meter hard capped, so all the range increase that you get goes to waste. Keep that in mind. You have Absolution, where you can consume your sin. You have the Furor, which also applies sin to enemies close to you now when you cast it. The Condemnation you can cast while you're walking. It's basically like the flamethrower ability out of your hands in a cone in front of you. This ability also heals you. Cleansing Fire, more stat points. Not sure what Scalding does. I'm gonna get into that in the in-depth guide and Tools of Justice. Then we're gonna have the Sanctifier promotion class, which I already told you. The Fire Tornadoes applied knockdown, and the Hellfire Aura slows and hits up to 7 people around you. Aya Furor also now makes you CC immune and increases your resistances, or at least it reduces the damage you take. You get Blink of Faith, which is an opener blink, 30 meter range. Spitting Distance is the significantly increases the damage of Condemnation. And the Protection, which allows us to equip Reckoning, where you can, when you have barriers on you, you can make them explode and deal damage with them. This damage is capped to a maximum of 4,420, but this is actually pretty nice. Force Wave, we've seen that before. You can push enemies away, so out into the hunger in the final fight or of ledges. You have the Glamour Weapon for even more damage, and the Phantom Armor for additional armor. So, the Wood Elf Frostguard. This is my main character in the game, although I probably build it a bit different at the moment. You get the Freezing Blast, which is a ground ability for 30 meters, which reduces the damage enemies do. So this build is basically a debuff machine, a buff and debuff machine. You get more stat points. The only thing you care about is the intellect to increase the proc chance of your focus gem, which you can equip when you take the free weave and focus. So on a frost guide I would always go with volatile focus and volatile eyes, because this applies knockdown. You get frost armor, which you can cast for your friendly, so they get their armor increased by 3,500. This goes away though after a while, I think after 12.5 seconds if they get hit for 5 times. Black Eyes is a healing debuff, so the enemy in those fields receive 20% or 25% less healing for a certain amount of time. Bitter Cold Thawing Eyes, I don't think those are very strong, that's why I don't take them in my build. Shatterstorm is a very strong ability, you should always take this. And then we go Frostguard, so basically the Volatile Ice does a knockdown, the Freezing Blast gets the Crippling Ice debuff, which decreases damage, and the Shatterstorm has a chance to spawn Frost Armors and hit. They didn't take the Icy Vein in this build, which is the strongest ultimate in the game, so if you build a character, don't use this build, always take Icy Vein and maybe think about going on the top to take Blizzard instead of the Thawing Ice down here and that healing stuff. I don't agree with that part of the guild. On the major disciplines, they are definitely doing the right thing. That's the exact same thing what I'm doing. You take Forest Creature for the slow stake and the Pixie Dust to increase the healing that friendlies receive. You take the protection stake to increase protections for your friends, and the V1 to further debuff enemies. You combine that with the barbed stake to also have a stake that deals damage, and the fortified stake to increase the effectiveness of all your stakes. That was the Frostguard. Now we have the Elkin Fury. The Fury is the CC build of the Paladin. So again, let's just skip all the talents because we kind of covered those. We're gonna go straight into the Fury promotion class, where you can see Divine Light now also knockdowns when it casts. The Devotion cleanses crowd control effects on the group when it's cast, so it's another cleanse. And the Holy Warrior has increased health buff and adds a slow to your melee attacks. You also get... wait, no, that's already it. And now let's look at the disciplines. Very similar to the Pit Fighter here. You get the Entertainer, which increases the effectiveness and the duration and the radius of your songs, and you get the Requiem consonant change and the song twisting. Requiem is this massive debuff aura that you have and you can put on enemies. You combine that with the Phantom Armor for more defenses, because the Fury is a mail-wearing class, and the Song of Speed because we all like the movement on those songs. So now let's look into the damage archetype. There we have a good amount of stuff to cover. So here we have the Half-Giant Alpha Warrior, my personal favorite melee class at the moment besides the Assassin. A Half-Elf Stormcaller, a Human Warden. The Warden is probably one of the strongest range classes, especially very, very strong in solo. I think it has a steeper learning curve, but it's still one of the best classes in the game at the moment. It's definitely worth learning it, because you also want to know where its weaknesses and its strong suits are when you play against it. The High Elf Archmage, which is a very, very good damage dealer at the moment. Crazy damage. The Frostweaver Fanatic, also very good, but not as high of an AoE potential as the Archmage. But on the upside, the Fanatic is probably a bit easier to play than the Archmage. You have the Myrmidon Titan, also good, but I would say one of the hardest classes in the game. I explain a bit later why that is. Then we have the Duelist Slayer. And now let's look into those, and let's start with the Half-Giant Alpha Warrior. So the Half-Giant Alpha Warrior, the Half-Giant is nice because he gets a big strength bonus and therefore big damage boost, and he has a racial stun. Basically a backhand, he slaps you with the back of his hand. Then we have the Half-Giant Alpha Warrior skills. So you have the Massive Cleave, which then opens up your Whirlwind. The Vicious Stomp is one of the major abilities because that synergizes with the Dominance. So as an Alpha Warrior, when you leap and when you critically hit, you collect stacks of Dominance. And consuming those stacks of Dominance makes certain abilities auto-crit. So for example, Vicious Stomp and then the second ability, so the Suppress or the Rend, are also benefiting from this effect. Then the Throw Hurlbat, it has 40 meters, it deals decent damage. This is just great for chasing enemies down, slowing them down when they're trying to run away. Dominator is that ability that I talked about, which gives you stacks of dominance when you hit critically with an auto attack. On the Alpha Warrior, all the stand battles definitely make sense. You definitely want the leap because this is your gap closer. And then on the Alpha Warrior promotion class, you get dominance when you leap. Your Whirling Paint now hits 7 people and reduces the anti-crit chance of enemies. And the Neckbreaker only costs 400 soul power and critically strikes. So Neckbreaker has crazy damage potential. You in general have crazy damage potential with the Alpha Warrior while being extremely tanky. Mighty Warrior is another heal on top of that, and you go Battleton main to get the Demolisher and the Paragon. I personally like to play the Alpha Warrior with the Paragon and the Scrapper. The Scrapper knockdowns on your Retaliate. The Demolisher is great for shield breaker, so if somebody is parrying or blocking, so if you're against Knights or Paladins and they parry or block, use this ability and you will knock them down and you can finish them off. Pretty nice. That combined with Spirit Whip and Payback. I also use different abilities here. Spirit Whip is useful if you're hitting enemies that stand close together, because you can hit another target, and if that auto attack crits, you get a dominant stance. But I basically use abilities to pump up my damage out, my single target damage output as much as possible. So for AoEs, I use Neckbreaker, and the rest of the time I mostly and my Whirlwind, of course, and for the rest I go for single target damage to finish enemies off. So the next thing we want to look at is the Half-Elf Stormcaller. The Half-Elf Stormcaller is the damage dealing promotion of the Druid. So we get the bark skin again. We've seen this with the Druid Earthkeeper. We have the Leeching Seed. I'm gonna skip most of the talents because I want to get this to an end before the stream starts. We have the Avatar of Storms, which gives you a damage buff, a damage bonus, and a critical strike buff, and Call of Lightning. This is an AoE that deals damage and stuns. Very good ability. Also Gaia's Wail is, from what I heard, quite strong at the moment. If you charge this up, you can hit up to 4 enemies and do pretty good damage. I'm not sure if Ghost Army still roots you in place. If this is not the case anymore, then pretty cool, but I think Ghost Army locks you in place because it's a ground target thing. Then on this spec we get 4 disciplines. Those are very well chosen in my opinion. Stay in the fight helps a lot when you are low on resource, so this means you auto attack for free when you are below 5% resources. Supreme Element heals you when you get fire damage and reflects damage when you get electricity damage. Subvert Expectation increases your attack power. Inverted and it has inverted scaling with your resources. So if you're on high resources, you get a decent amount of attack power, and when you are on low resources, you get a lot of attack power. Weapon Finesse increases your power efficiency, so that means your abilities use 20% less resource. Then we have the archetype Human Warden. Warden is a very great class at the moment. I can highly recommend everybody to try it out. This is basically your hybrid melee ranged class. But at the moment it's mostly played as a ranged class, I would say. So you're getting this Barrage, which is basically a ranged ground targeted AoE. Rapid Fire is a quite low cooldown channeled ability which has high spike single target burst damage. With the Sweep you can either lock an enemy in place and dodge leap away when you are in melee tray, or you can stun them and stay close to them. The 2 stat bundles also quite useful. And then you get the Warden promotion, which gives you certain attack power, increased trap bonus. We get into the traps in the second. Your Twin Surge inflicts a suppress on the second attack. That's cool. Your Concussive Trap grants a barrier when triggered. This can happen once every 5 seconds, and the Disengage. But the most interesting ability on the Warden is the Trap Master. You can activate this, and then you get a buff for 30 seconds with a 60-second cooldown, where every damage that you make has a chance to spawn a trap, and that trap proc is invisible first of all, and when an enemy walks into it, it stuns and procs and deals AoE damage. It's also an AoE stun. So what you can basically do with the Warden, you build a minefield inside of the enemy raid. And this is very, very helpful as well in solo and also in bigger fight. And the ultimate of the Warden is also, I think, one of the strongest in the games, because when you activate it, you get 40% life leech. So very, very strong, this build. They go for Dark Domain. I think Corrupted Soul is a very good pick. Poisoner kind of forces you to go into melee, so this is a... I don't know a lot of people playing with this. I tried playing it, but the fact that it forces you to go into melee is not the best pick. I'm also gonna go into alternatives when I do the more in-depth guide. Of course here, sparing for your ranged auto attacks is a good idea, just 10% more damage on that. Explosive traps to add a burning dot, and the toxic trap to earn the black mantle. All very great. Somewhere you have a skill that gives you bleed damage on your trap. I can't find it anymore, but I assume it is still like that. So the High Elf Archmage is the ranged powerhouse AoE. It's a beast. It's not easy to play, but it's a beast. So the Crystal Lance, you can basically consume your ice storage and deal quite good damage, initial damage. The Free Weaving allows you to break a focus. The Black Ice, he also gets the healing debuff. Then you also want the Blizzard, because the Blizzard, the Shatterstorm has a quiet cooldown, and with that everybody in your Shatterstorm gets slowed. Since this deals so massive damage, you want those enemies to be slower and not to get out of that as fast. So you also have the Archmage promotion. Volatile Ice Weave explodes twice fast and reduces the enemy on anti-critical strike. Critical Lance can now deal execute damage to targets under 45% health. Usually this is, I don't know, is it 25 or 30 at the moment? But somewhere around that area. And your Shatterstorm can spawn Volatile Ice. So you also get the Death Shard. I actually will have to look up what that is in the more in-depth guide about the Archmage. Piercing Gold gives you armor penetration, and we go for Frost. Frigid Ground reduces the enemy's... No, actually Frigid Ground deals damage, applies Frostbite, which is a dot, and Harsh Elements reduces the ice resistance on anybody who has a Frostbite. So basically you want to open up with Frigid Ground, get that debuffs on enemies, and then keep that coming. So the next one is the Fanatic. So Fanatic, also very cool class. Absolution, you basically want to stack up on 5 auto attacks and then use Absolution. Use your other skills. For Raw, you're gonna use when you're low mana. The Hellfire Shield helps you with tornadoes and knockdowns, and an aura around you that deals damage. The Fire Wave automatically crits when the enemies are burning. Furore also adds some basic attack damage bonus, and Fire Tornadoes can hit the same person 4 times. We go Trusted on that build. Redemption is basically like the Rapid Fire but on a Fire Mage. This is a very good build, and here you get the Reactive Barrier for extra attack power and a little bit of defenses. The defensive field, you get the Weapon Finesse so that you get your mana management in order. The Payback, so you crit more when you are Retaliate, and the Careless Whisper, so basic attacks increase your critical chance. This is also very strong build, gonna get into it more deep in depth later. The Minotaur Titan. Actually, the Minotaur Titan is the melee, very strong in small scale and solo powerhouse. If you like the Crash ability, I think the only really worth talking here is the Crash ability and the disciplines. So what you can do is you can do that ability Berserk, and then you don't take damage for 8 seconds. But that damage is accumulated in your Crash. And basically after 12 seconds, so when those 8 seconds are over, you crash, and you have to be charging the ability Pulverize, and then When you do that, all that damage is basically so absorbed and you don't take damage. But you have to master that ability, and if somebody interrupts you while you're doing that pulverize, you take the damage anyway. This is very strong. It does a lot of bleed damage. It's built on Freedom Fighter, which makes you CC immune for 9 seconds. Everybody in your group, that is. And you get the hamstring, so you're slowing when attacking bleeding damage, and you deal 20 more damage to enemies with low health. You're doing Underdog, which means you get attack power and retaliate, weapon finesse to help with the resources, and payback. The Fey Blackguard. Blackguard is an assassin build. This guy basically has bleeds. Does he have bleeds? Let's just look at the promotion class. So he applies bleeds to enemies with his kidney shot, has increased duration per pip spent on in the zone, and you get a barrier when you backstab. You also get a Dagger Storm, which is an AoE ability. And I just put on the music because I'm preparing to raid you over to Crowfall game. I'm gonna do that after I'm done with the last build. The abilities is Top Thumper, which gives you 50 resolve, so you have a reduced chance to be affected by CC effects, and it recovers health every 2 seconds after you get knocked down. Long Live the Fighter, you inflict bleeds with your 3rd basic attack, and you're attacking when you're attacking a bleeding target, you get the chance to spread that bleed to nearby enemies. Sparring to increase basic attack damage, Under a Dog to increase attack power when you're retaliating, and Critical Dodge to get a dodge pip when you critically hit. And the last but not least, it's the Genetian Slayer. He has the pepper box shot, the rapid shots, which is also a channeled burst damage thing, the flintlock shot to generate pips, and I'm gonna rush through this a bit. So the Slayer, basically the pepper box shot deals 50% more damage. Keen Guard adds a 1% critical strike and a 3% critical damage buff, scaling with pips. And the Flintlock shot generates a pip and has a chance to reduce its cooldown when you're using basic attacks. The Slayer is really your stealth, ranged, dealing damage powerhouse. You have Master of Darkness, where you have Stink Bomb, which is an AoE stun that you can use from stealth. You generate pips in stealth. You can go for broke, which basically launches you forward from borrow and deals cone in an AoE damage, and if you don't take damage you go back down. And you can tunnel, which means when you're in stealth you can tunnel under walls. So if you are in front of the wall and you're in stealth, you use tunnel and then you end up on the other side of the wall. So with that, I want to say goodbye. Thank you for sticking around and listening to my archetype summary. I'm going to say goodbye and